Happy Earth Week. I'm Brian Siggers, and I have the privilege of serving as the Cleveland Metro Advocacy Director for the Ohio Environmental Council, an organization deeply committed to fostering collaboration in pursuit of a healthier environment. Our mission is to secure healthy land, water, and air for all who call Ohio home. We understand that building a sustainable future requires the concerted efforts of individuals, communities, businesses, and policymakers alike. It's this spirit of collaboration that's brought us together today. But before we get started, we would like to thank our partners from Power Clean Future Moms Clean Air Force, and Growth Opportunity Partners for their collaboration on today's event. And joining us today, we have our esteemed panelists who embody the spirit of environmental stewardship and innovation. First, we have Congresswoman Shontel Brown, a true climate champion whose dedicated environmental advocacy has made a lasting impact. Representing Ohio's 11th congressional district, Congresswoman Brown has delivered on transformational climate, clean energy jobs, and justice legislation for all communities. Next, we want to welcome Mayor Kristen Holzheimer Gail of Euclid, whose leadership has propelled sustainable development in her city to new heights. Mayor Holzheimer Gail's visionary approach exemplifies the vital role that municipal leaders play in driving local environmental action and inspiring broader change. We're also privileged to have Michael Jeans, the CEO of Growth Opportunity Partners and the Go Green Fund, who's also the host of our event here today. So can we please give him a round of applause? Michael's work in spearheading the establishment of a green bank, the first African-American-led green bank in the nation, underscores the significance of innovative financing mechanisms in driving a just and equitable transition. A green bank not only provides crucial financial support, but also serves as a catalyst for transformative change, unlocking opportunities for sustainable infrastructure projects and renewable energy initiatives. And today, we're gathered to discuss the pivotal role of federal investments like the Inflation Reduction Act and bipartisan infrastructure law in enabling environmental progress, where we're reminded of the interconnectedness of our efforts. Federal support not only amplifies the impact of local initiatives, but also drives innovation, resilience, and equity across communities. But before we get started with the panel, we're thrilled by yesterday's news that the Biden-Harris administration will invest $7 billion in solar energy projects over 900,000 households in low-income and disadvantaged communities, right here. One of two Solar for All grants coming to the state of Ohio was led by Growth Opportunity Partners in collaboration with many partners in this room, including Power Clean Future Ohio, Citizens Utility Board, Solar United Neighbors, and Elevate, in addition to the George Gunn Foundation and Cleveland Foundation. This grant represents an unprecedented opportunity to expand access to solar energy, alleviate energy burdens, and empower vulnerable communities. It's a testament to the progress we've made and a springboard for even greater achievements on the horizon. The other application, led by the Ohio Air Quality Development Authority, will also include many of the partners involved in this work, and the Ohio Environmental Council was determined to support both projects however we can. Between the two proposals selected by the EPA, hundreds of millions of dollars are coming to Ohio for low-income solar access. And lastly, we have to seize this moment to reaffirm our commitment to a sustainable future, one defined by collaboration, vision, and equitable progress. Together, we have the power to create a world where environmental stewardship thrives, communities flourish, and future generations inherit a planet teeming with promise. Thank you guys for being here today. And panelists, thank you all for being here with us today. So just get us started, I want to start off with a question of what drives your commitment to environmental and climate actions and climate action? Congresswoman Brown.
First and foremost, I want to thank you for pulling this together, celebrating the good news. Happy Earth Week, Earth Day to everyone. And thank you for hosting. And it's always a pleasure to be in the company of the fine Mayor of Euclid, who has been a leader in this space. When I think about sustainability, environmental justice, racial justice. It is an environmental and an economic issue that drives me as it relates to this issue. On a personal note, just looking at trying to get solar panels in my own home, it was not affordable, it was not attainable. And so we wanted to make sure we had some resources put forth in low-income communities, Black and Brown communities who have been hit very hard by the environmental injustices that have happened due to things like redlining, not having the proper infrastructure. So when we look at these things, to me, through this lens, it is both racial, it is both environmental, but again, it is also economical. Being able to invest into these projects are going to create job opportunities, improve our energy, lower our costs for energy. So those are the things that drive me in this work. And it is such a privilege to be able to work with an administration who understands the importance of making the investments in communities that have been overlooked, looked over, left out, and lost and left behind. So that is what drives me every day. And I couldn't be more thrilled again about the resources that are coming down the pike in the future. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Congresswoman. Mr. Jeans.
So for us at Growth Ops, this is an inescapable reality. There's no way to effectively invest in underserved communities without getting to the core, getting to the root. When we look at health and well-being, it comes back to environment. And whether that conversation was being had in an intentional way in low-income disadvantaged communities and I make the distinction between those communities and communities of color, it doesn't seem that there was enough tangible action. And so fast forward, we have the effects of that, cognitive effects, disinvestment begets more disinvestment, but environment incubates life. And so if these communities are going to afford a livable environment, not just surviving, then we've got to address it from a climate and sustainability perspective. So at Growth Ops for us, it wasn't enough, and it isn't enough for us to deal with the economics, because the economics are what are a mechanism to achieve a set of things for people. So we turn the equation around, and we begin with people. We begin with the persons and communities, and we build on that. That's our litmus test going forward. We hear this term about improving quality of life, and that's our charge. But I think better said, it's improving the health and well-being. It's improving livability. But it's not us doing the work. These are folks who have been concerned about their communities for a long time, before we built out this space here at 6001 Euclid. And so how do we activate people in a place who have been the recipients of high carbon emissions, who weren't the beneficiaries of strategic plans that put parks in places and put trees in places to help clean the air and capture carbon? Well, today we're going to start with them first. And this work for us is an honor of a lifetime. I can't wait to walk down these streets with a Congresswoman. I can't wait to see the children's faces when they finally see that we're not driving by, we're not going through a thoroughfare and ignoring them, but saying along the way that we care, but that the first of investments, not the last, are going to be in the places where they play, the places that they know. Sustainability is number one for us, and we couldn't be more thrilled with the Biden administration and the EPA and their commitment to ensure that these dollars don't get trapped in other places, and they don't give us the excuse of saying we couldn't find Black and Brown people. We know where they are. These are the communities we have served. And last thing I'll say is that as we're serving underserved communities and people of color, it's this room that activates it. Right? If I'm only serving people who look like me, then I've fallen short. And the same applies to others in this room. And so the best of the American experience is when we do these things together.
Thank you, Mr. Jeans.
Thanks. It's really an honor to be here with this esteemed panel. And I got the invite. I said, why am I on this panel? But I think it represents a community certainly that is economically disadvantaged. I majority, minority, have a lot of the needs of many of the other communities. And I think because of our size and because of our really commitment to be innovative and forward thinking, we've been able to pilot and try a lot of different things. So what drives me as mayor, and I think what drives my administration, is wanting to make things better than we found them. So we're working very hard to make sure Euclid stays a great community, a vibrant community where all can be proud to look forward to visit. We know that means not just focusing on the here and now today, but thinking about the future. So as we plan for what our children will inherit, what the next generation will inherit, we know that we need to work on sustainability. We know that we need to make sure we're taking care of our natural resources. And as the lakefront city, we need to make sure we're taking care of and using all of our environmental resources to the best advantage that we can to attract and help grow a community like that. So it's really that commitment to making sure our kids have a better place to live than we have now.
Thank you, Mayor. Absolutely. Congresswoman Brown, we're going to go back to you. So many of us here understand that the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law and Inflation Reduction Act are the largest ever investments in climate action, spurring record-breaking levels of public and private investment across the United States, including right here in Ohio. What are some of the highlights of these two laws in terms of promoting emissions reductions and healthier environments at the local level?
Hello. Okay, that's much better. All right. So those who didn't hear, so the bipartisan infrastructure law is one of the proudest votes I was able to take coming into office. I was able to cast my vote for it on my second day in office, and I teased my colleagues because I remind them that they have been working on infrastructure week for decades, and that I was able to get it done on my second day. But in all seriousness, it is one of the things that really is going to have decades of impact right here in our district. We're talking about decades of disinvestment around issues that Michael talked about. I mean, when you think about our community that has 40% of the children have asthma, likely to get asthma. So the bipartisan infrastructure law will deal with things around dealing with our lead pipes, making sure that we don't have those issues that are causing our children to have unclean water, that are ultimately impacting their ability to learn. Those are one of the greatest things that I think in this. We're not removing just 10, 15, 20% of the lead pipes, but 100% of the lead pipes are going to be removed. The Inflation Reduction Act, the largest investment in the world's history towards climate change. We're talking about giving rebates to folks who are going to retrofit or upgrade their appliances. We already touched on the solar panels. Being able to deliver $156 million to the state, plus $156 million to growth ops. So over $300 million just going to make sure that we're dealing with issues that have had such a disparate impact on low-income communities that look like mine. And these are things that the Biden-Harris administration was very intentional about. I would be remiss if I didn't talk about the Justice 40 component. As a Black woman, making sure that minorities get their fair share is critically important to me. It's work that I led when I was in county council, and it's work that I was able to continue to take a lead on and be a voice for in the halls of Congress. We're talking about 40% of those funds that are being appropriated. So when you think about just the $300 million at 40%, we're talking about $120 million bare minimum that are going to be going towards minority communities and businesses and companies. So that's what we're dealing with. And these are huge pieces of legislation that most people aren't familiar with how it's impacting their everyday lives. But again, this is going to have residual impacts for decades. And I think the thing that is probably most frustrating for me is that we passed these laws in 2021 and 22. It's now 2024, and we're just beginning to see the seeds of our labor. Government takes a long time to work, y'all. I hate to admit it, but the work is being done. So I know we talk about these things, but you are going to start seeing more of the implementation. It was first passing the legislation, education, and now implementation is going to happen. And it's not just going to be for 1, 2, or 3 years. We're talking about, again, decades of activity that will benefit the 11th Congressional District for years from now.
Thank you very much for that, Congresswoman. Thank you for telling the story of these federal investments and how impactful they're going to be. And to go to the implementation, we want to talk to Mayor Gail for a moment. What role do you see local governments playing in leveraging federal investments for sustainable development?
Local governments really one that so the federal government, and we're very grateful for the funds that have come down. They provide the funding. The local governments are the ones that have to implement them. I think we also have to be conveners. So what we can't do, we can bring partners to the table, meet with local businesses, help them, and residents, help them understand what's available and be sort of the conduit to that. And then I think we need to lead the way. We need to show that we're committed to it. We need to show our commitment, and then hopefully residents, businesses, community organizations will follow. So I think those are our main goals that we could play. Sure. Sorry, do you want me to repeat that? And then do you want me to talk about some of what we're doing, or I know that was.
Yeah, but can you also speak to how the investments have supported climate action in the city of Euclid?
In the city of Euclid, yeah. So I mentioned we can be conveners, and so oftentimes that's bringing partners to the table. We've been so appreciative of the partnership with Power Clean Future. We don't have, as a city, we're 50,000 residents, economically disadvantaged. We are an environmental justice community. We don't have the expertise necessarily on staff, although we have wonderful staff who work hard and have an expertise. Christine McIntosh, who was a council member, started really with the commitment. Our planning and development director, Patrick Rogan-Myers, and previous staff who really made the commitment and brought stuff forward. But so we have the ability to be that convener. We can also be the ones to implement things. And so we've had the opportunity to take advantage of some of these federal funds. Everything we do is because of partnerships, because of funding that's available. Operating a city like ours, so much is dependent on the day-to-day operations of things. So it's easy for communities, I think, to say, oh, we don't have the money to do that. These are extra initiatives. We've really made the point of trying to build it into everything we do. And so whether it's road work, whether it's parks, whether it's recreation, whether it's business development, we try to build in that sustainability initiative with that. So to talk about specifics, certainly our waterfront is one of our best projects in terms of taking care of our environment. And so we were able to recapture waterfront, make it open to the public, accessible to people who had not had access to it before. 3/4 mile multi-purpose trail, getting rid of erosion, bringing back natural habitat. So that's one project, but we also know, as we think about the commitment to reducing our carbon emissions, looking at providing electrical vehicle chargers. And again, thanks to Greater Cleveland Partnership, thanks to NOACA, we were able to get 2 electric vehicle charging stations in Euclid. Thanks to things like the Energy Efficiency Conservation Block Grant, we're able to do a pilot of electric vehicles for our city vehicles. And things like that. So really energy efficiency updates in our buildings that are made available through an energy efficiency program that was federally funded, but through the state. So everything we do is really dependent on those funds because it's often hard to find them ourselves. Clean water, I want to touch on just briefly. We've, $270 million improvement to our wastewater treatment plant. The water going into the lake is cleaner than the lake. That again is under consent decree, but we're working on it piece by piece, making great progress. And then our commitment to understanding that green space, park space, trails are so important to community livability, but also sustainability. And so we've made a kind of a systematic effort recently to upgrade our playgrounds, our parks, build new trails, make efficiencies in terms of those type of things. But we couldn't have done that without ARPA funds and without some of the other federal funds that have enabled us to do that. So I think the city's role, I can talk a lot about that, but I know you want to hear from other panelists. But our commitment is, again, we have to build it into everything that we do and make sure people understand why we're doing what we're doing. But the federal funding makes it possible for a city like Euclid to do that.
And I just want to piggyback because you reminded me of $1 billion for the, for Lake Erie, just to make sure that we are, that the water is clean, is an investment. And President Biden came to the city to deliver that good news. We talk about Lincoln Electric right in the city of Euclid, creating the electric vehicles and doing a lot of the work and the job opportunities that will come from that. And a lot of these job opportunities are going to be good paying jobs that will not require a 4-year degree. So it's residual impact that these investments, these multi-million dollars investments, again, that will have residual effects, not only in Euclid, but throughout Ohio and very well throughout the country.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Congresswoman. Thank you guys very much. And then for Mr. Jeans, so the Biden administration just announced $20 billion in funding designed to flow into tens of thousands of clean energy and pollution-cutting projects nationwide through the Greenhouse Gas Reduction Fund. As we mentioned in the introduction, just yesterday, Growth Ops was selected as a Solar for All grant recipient to lead the Industrial Heartland Solar Coalition's transformative initiative. So my question for you, one, how does this type of funding enhance Growth Opportunity Partners' ability to finance and support green energy projects? And two, how do federal incentives influence your decision-making process when you're selecting projects to finance?
Thank you for the question. I've got one housekeeping item that I missed, and one is we have an elected official in the room, Tristan Rader, councilman in Lakewood. Wanted to acknowledge Tristan, long in this space, United Solar Neighbors, and I also want to acknowledge someone who's beaming since this group walked in the room, the person who gave me a call as a senior program officer in transition from a longstanding program officer, senior program officer at GUND, and that's John Mitterholzer, who had this wacky, crazy idea of, hey, would you like to start a green bank? So this is a particularly special day and week for John, for the team who's also assembled, and several folks are in here who we work with that we'll be sure to highlight, call out, who helped us get the application in that was ultimately successful for the $156+ million. Now, how does that look and how will that work in our communities? A bit of expectation setting for us and for the room. We've got a couple months ahead of us for negotiations with the EPA, so we have more concrete guidance on how we can use these funds, where they can be used. We have some guidance now, but this has been an iterative process to say the least. Someone said government moves slow. Yeah, this has been one of those exercises, but they delivered in the end, and it's thanks to the tenacity of Congresswoman Brown and others who continue to be present and advocates, if not citadels, for the communities they serve. So how does this then affect the work that we're doing? One thing we're excited about is that we entered this conversation through the lens of Justice 40. And we found ourselves with an application submitted that's essentially Justice 100. So 100% of the households that we will serve will be disadvantaged, low-income communities in environmental communities. And we are incredibly proud of that. It's not a footnote. We lead with it. And there's some data that speaks to the impact of if we cease from underinvesting in these communities, and we actually invest at par as we have the rest of our neighborhoods, we would add $8 trillion to the national economy. And I want to put that in perspective. Our economy is a roughly $26 trillion economy. So for $8 trillion to be added simply by being equitable, which is synonymous to fair, that's real impact, and I can't find a good reason not to do it. So this application achieves that. 3.5 million households in the application format who we will serve, and will reduce carbon outputs by over 160 tons annually. This is clean air for everyone who lives and plays and works and learns in these communities, and will create, as the Congresswoman referenced, over 1,000 jobs just under the Solar for All vertical. How does that influence what we do? how does the legislation and the capital that's federal influence what we do? For us, it's not money to spend. Our goal is to raise additional capital at an 8 to 12x clip, if you will. And part of the reason for that is if you add all of the capital that is currently available to mitigate the effects of climate change, it's not enough. And so we have to look at this, even this large award, as seed capital. And then secondly, the systems and mechanisms in place in and around poverty to eradicate poverty seem to benefit everyone except the impoverished. And so our pursuit is to endow the financial systems and solutions that will essentially do away with poverty. And 156 million is a great start. But if we can get to a $1 and $2 billion number, we can do more than solar rooftops. We can affect the entire household. We can affect communities and just play our part, as our partners will do the same. And in the aggregate, I'll feel real good as an old man looking back, watching children play.
Thank you very much for your response, Mr. Jeans. Congressman, we want to come back to you. We talked a lot about how federal funding is supporting climate action in the public and private sectors, but what about the average Ohioan? Why are these programs beneficial to them?
So I think I may have touched on it, and it's a great question. And that's what I drive home with my team, my staff, who are here today helping me keep on time and on task. I would be remiss if I did not point out our district office manager and my deputy chief of staff, Kim Hodge Edwards. Would you please say hi? And then also Will McDonald, he's my comms director. And so he helps me with the messaging that we get out. And it's so important to me to make sure that we understand how we're impacting folks at home. So you know exactly how this is helping you. But tax credits, rebates, those are directly beneficial that the average Ohioan can take full advantage of right now. And as I mentioned, and I should have put a disclaimer on that. Federal government moves slow. Okay, federal government moves slow. Cities are a lot more nimble, and we certainly were more nimble when we were at the county, but federal government does have a tendency to move slow. So they're still ironing out some of the details as it relates to some of these projects. But knowing that it's there, knowing that we have the opportunity to capitalize and seize these moments, these again, missed opportunities from decades past where disinvestment was made, where these dollars did not flow into our communities. They are happening now. And so to get the details, we can go to energy.gov/save, energy.gov/save. Where? Tell your friends, tell your family, tell your neighbors, because we want to make sure it's not enough for the panelists to know this information. It's important that you know it and that you share it and that we get it out into the community, because one thing they don't give us with these dollars are marketing budgets. And that is part of the problem. People don't know what's accessible and available to them. So energy.gov/save. You can find out more information on how you can benefit from some of these tax rebates, some of these programs, and some of these tax credits. And then lastly, I would also point out we're the place where the river caught on fire. Not once, but multiple times. So that was a real problem in our community. People didn't want to go downtown. They didn't want to go. You couldn't swim in the water, but now things are changing because we have been making significant investments that are impacting Ohioans now, and it's turning our city around. I mean, just think about the past couple of weekends that we've had with the Final Four, that's being on the path of the total eclipse. I mean, there's been a myriad of things, but that has been an asset that we can sell and capitalize on and create additional opportunities for revenue to come into our community. So not only are we benefiting here in Ohio, but again, it's an attraction for other people to come to our fine city and make investments and boost our economy.
Thank you very much, Congresswoman. And I know you touched on this a little bit, but I want to hear from other panelists as well. How can we ensure that our local community receives the federal investments that it needs? And we'll start with you.
a big piece of that is communicating it. And so making sure our residents are aware, making sure our businesses are aware, making sure that we're telling the story. We have, and working with partners. And so having some of them come in to talk about solar on your rooftops, that what's available and how do you get to it. Talking about energy efficiency from you can have an energy aggregate and sign up for the green energy option. Just, making sure we're communicating that to folks. We started in Euclid with a plan. We made the commitment to reduce our reduce our carbon emissions. We joined Power Clean Future. We ended up then developing a plan for sustainability improvements using Next Gen. And we have a whole list of recommendations. It's available on our website. We provide information about all the different options available to our residents. But you have to get out and talk to people. And especially when you're in a community who isn't used to these kind of programs, making sure they understand, making sure they know how to do it. Sometimes holding their hand and walking them through it. So it's an education and a communication.
Thank you, Mayor. Mr. Jenkins.
So how do you ensure these dollars go where they need to go? I think you start with putting them in the hands of people who don't need a contract to be accountable to the people they serve, right? So putting the dollars in the hands of people who have been long in this work, who don't just show up because there's money in these neighborhoods or for these neighborhoods, I think that's a very good start. Then secondly, there is an education component that has a lot to do with marketing that's underfunded. So if you want to go to growthops.gov and make a contribution, not kidding. Couldn't miss that one. And so there's an education component to this. I refuse to call it a literacy moment because I am often so heartened when I go into different corners of our communities and there's an opportunity for them to share what they already know. And so it's not our role to descend upon places. It's our role to go into places and get to know them even better. I love when I drive an electric vehicle. My colleague Marcus Glanton drives an electric vehicle. We zip through the streets of Cleveland at the speed limit. And I love it when these kids are excited. Sometimes they run next to the vehicle on the sidewalk. And you know what I do? I slow down and I look for a good place to stop. And I ask them, what's the cause of the excitement? Turns out it's not my tie, right? It's not my smile. It's that they know that that's an electric vehicle. And not only do they know that, but they know everything that it took me to go online to find out about, to understand how to operate it. They already knew that. They ask questions about power walls and stations and solar panels. And those are moments that I can't get enough of because that's what rings in my head when I hear people say these communities need to know this and that. And the assumption is that there's a lack of literacy. There's been a lack of engagement and communication. And so if we start there and then we identify how we can help fill the gaps, then I think we get to better adoption rates of this work. And we might be surprised at the earlier efforts to adopt that our work as a result of this week's announcement allows us to focus on these communities where the barrier was only financial. And so our application in a very unique way covers 100% of the costs of solar installation on low-income household rooftops. So the barrier is removed. If there's a job that I have, there are a lot of them in this work, but one of them is to remove barriers because somebody had to remove them for me. And people still, we need folks who are willing to be selfless enough and to leverage platform and network to remove barriers for others. And when we do that, we see increased participation rates and we see higher and faster adoption rates. It's less of what we do, it's what we're willing to stop doing and allow and enable others to do what they're designed to do.
I think that's powerful. Yes. So for me, it's the collaboration component. All levels of government and agencies who have been, again, as Michael so eloquently pointed out, have already been doing this work. Like, we don't have to reinvent the wheel. There are people that know this, and I don't pretend to be an expert. I have my notes because this is not a space where I am an expert in. I am becoming much more familiar. It is an important issue to me, but trusting the people who do the work to do the work. And I think that that is so critically important, making sure that we're not operating in silos. So local, county, state, and federal government all working together so that we can maximize the opportunities that are before us right now. Those are the things that I think that we need to do to ensure that the resources are going where there needs to be, and that we have folks that are able to access them. And so for me personally, it was important to me that we start doing webinars. These grants are available. We do grant webinars to make sure that people understand how to tap in, how to access them, who they can reach out to, what agencies are important, because as a recovering entrepreneur, nothing was more frustrating than going to in a workshop or a roundtable or a panel and walking out with just more paper or more information, and not being able to really have something tangible to say, okay, I got this from that. And so for me, making sure that we put these webinars out so that people have a direct path, or at least some guidance on how to access all of this historic investment that is happening, that has been long overdue for our communities, was critically important to me. And then using my vote in the House of Representatives to be that voice for those who have been so underrepresented and underserved for so long is how I personally deliver for this district to make sure that we are getting the resources that we are long overdue.
Thank you very much, Congresswoman. Mr. Jeans and Mayor Gail, as we discussed, we know that climate change is impacting the health of our environment and our communities. How can we engage and educate our community members about the importance of climate policy locally? And Mr. Jeans, we'll start with you.
Can you repeat the first part? I couldn't hear you.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, as we've discussed, we know that climate change is impacting the health of our environment and communities. How can we engage and educate our community members about the importance of climate policy locally?
So this gets to the place where government actually represents the people, right? Where the elected officials represent the people they serve. Congresswoman Brown is an incredible example, an exemplar of what happens when you elect someone who represents you. And represents her constituents. And so those leaders show up, and it's not always on huge stages and big ballrooms, but they show up in conversations like this. I think that's the root of it. The policy side then follows, but there's a real disconnect when you're fighting for everything, and now you want me to tackle policy, right? You've left me out of opportunity. You've not invested in my neighborhood schools. I had a car, but the potholes in the street took it out, right? Like when you start to stack these things and now you want me to tackle policy, I think that's an unreasonable expectation, right? And so I have a difficult time pointing to those who find themselves in that place. So part of this work is helping communities and individuals see themselves in the outcome, in the work, because right now that's largely missing. When I looked at sustainability in the United States, big disclaimer, in the United States, I didn't see a lot of folks who looked like me in this space. There weren't any who were leading green banks to kind of lead that discussion. A different scenario outside of the US. The reason I say that is, if that was the case for me, and I am occupying a space that is fully aware of energy and its implications, then what can I expect if the environment for those who are uninvested and underinvested communities doesn't include those inputs? So policy drives this in a very real and granular way. If we do this collectively as well as we could and we should, then yes, the effect should be improved upper respiratory outcomes in a community that ranks 7th in the country for asthma and upper respiratory. We should see some improvement there. We should see some improvement in cognitive abilities where ceilings have artificially been set because of a water that a child drank or the lead that a baby accidentally nibbled on. We should see benefit there then to policies in these low-income neighborhoods that have the same thresholds as other places so that the occupants have the same benefit. But what we should also see is an impact on the vote. If we spend more time together wrestling with the things that matter, not seeking commonality, but really respecting, admiring, and embracing our differences, and if we're doing that around climate, which none of us can escape, right? The environment we occupy is an environment we share. If we do this really well, then the best ringing of the bell is going to be when people then see their incredible impact and influence in democracy, and that their vote does count, no matter how many obstacles are in front of it. I can't tell you how many hurdles and obstacles and obstructions, dare I say obstructionists, when we were going through this process to apply and have a favorable outcome. And you know what that reminded me? I must be on to something on the other side of this. And so that's the message in underserved and underinvested communities that we as a team carry forward, that mayors have to carry forward. It's not just one of hope, it is one of hope. Hope's not the strategy. There's a lot of platform, there's a lot of execution that's behind it. When I see kids talking about the vote, when I see communities where it's assumed they're not going to show up, asking the questions and trying to get there, I think we will have done our role, and climate will have expanded into something far greater than we ever thought it could.
Thank you very much, Mr. James. Mayor?
Thank you. So what role does community engagement and building community awareness have in promoting climate change and policy? And I think I'll go back to what I said at the beginning. We have to incorporate it in almost everything we do. But I think I'm a big believer in power of community engagement, and that residents need to be involved and active and part of our process. I think you do that through everyday activities that touch their life every day. Keep Euclid Beautiful, which does litter pickups and recycling events, and brings the community together around, makes it easy for people to let's keep our community clean, and doing it for whatever variety of reasons if you're part of a youth group, but then understanding what that means to the broader community and our planet in general. Things like signing up for the energy aggregate green option, things like recycling, things like making sure it's part of people's everyday activities and making that connection to why it's important. I think you can get residents involved, engaged, and helping them understand what it means to them. And so this will, if you put a solar panel on your roof, you're not going to have an electric bill. What can you do with that money? And so making sure people understand the impact of it. I think we can't always wait for the residents and the community to tell us to do that as leaders. That's our job to say, here's the direction, here's the commitment, here's the vision. We do have to bring them on board, but I think it is up to us as leaders to set that trajectory.
Thank you very much, Mayor. Last question to all of you. We know that this work is highly collaborative. Federal investments are spurring new and innovative partnerships. Can you speak to the collaborative efforts you and your colleagues are undertaking to accelerate our community's transition to renewable energy, ensure sustainable and resilient infrastructure, and secure a healthy environment for all? We'll start with Congresswoman Brown.
Well, I think for me, it starts with meeting people where they are. And that's both in the halls of Congress and here. We have such a diverse group of members of Congress, and I'll just say it that way. So it does make coming to agreement difficult sometimes, but I mean, fortunately, we have been able to find some success in getting some things done. And so when we find that common ground, we're able to put forth legislation that will help people improve the quality of their lives, and not just a figure of speech, not just in a cliche way, but really improving the quality of their lives from health outcomes, economic outcomes, the environment, learning, every aspect of their lives. And that is, I think, why this is so important, such important work. We don't have another planet to live on, y'all. So there was the expression, there is no planet B. So we have to take care of this one. And so if we can't find common ground in that, shame on us. And so I think this is something that we can really take full advantage of, because what I know is when I'm dealing with folks in the district, they're not asking me about the polar bears. They don't care about carbon dioxide levels, whether we call it global warming or climate change. What they want to know is that they're going to have a healthy community to live in, a safe community, one where their families can learn, a justifiable community where people can drive down the streets safely, avoid these potholes that are tearing up cars, but making investments into the environment in which they live and breathe, and taking the food and knowing that we're not hurting and harming ourselves by the consumption of just the life that we live in our spaces. And for too many Black and brown people, and too many people that have been in low income, underserved communities, that has been the case. And it has created these disparate outcomes. So connecting those dots and making it make sense for people that have different lived experiences and different lived backgrounds, and finding that common ground of making sure that we understand this is our home together collectively, beyond race, the human race. We all have to figure out how to make this a better place to live. And that is the driving force that brings us together.
Thank you very much, Congresswoman. Mayor?
As I said earlier, collaboration is key. We couldn't do what we do without the partnerships of like Power Clean Future, NOACA, certainly, our state colleagues, our residents, the county Office of Sustainability, and a couple of examples of perhaps different type of collaboration. So we do regular business visits. We go out and meet with businesses, and through the course of those conversations, heard from many people, many of our businesses, the impact of when their power goes out to their business, and the power goes out and they have to shut down the plant, and that has huge, not only operational costs, but potentially penalties for some of our companies. We shared that conversation with somebody at the county, and now we're working with the county on the county microgrid project. So they chose Euclid as one of their sites to move forward with that. And that's because of some of those partnerships and relationships that we developed with our business community. Similarly, Amazon has a fulfillment center in Euclid, and is involved with Keep Euclid Beautiful, is a great partner to us on some of our community initiatives. They used their first pilot facility to get rid of plastic and do more sustainable practices, started in Euclid. So they've invested $1.5 million in redoing some of their conveyor belts and processes to get rid of plastic and reduce materials that they use. And we asked them, well, why did you choose Euclid? And they said, well, you guys work with us, and the work that you're doing made it a perfect place to try that. So sometimes you don't think that there's partnerships or collaborations that are, that they just kind of come about because of the work that you're doing. And so I think, the partnerships with our residents, we could not have done our lakefront project without private property owners giving up access to their private property through easements. That's a totally different and, unexpected things in a lot of places. People would, no, I'm not giving up my property, but people bought into the vision after a lot of work, a lot of building trust and public engagement around what is the end result and how do you get there. And so the work can't happen without partnerships and creative collaborations. And I think, everything we do is dependent on those partnerships.
Thank you very much, Mayor. Mr. Jeans?
Thank you for that question. If you're in this room and you work with Growth Ops Go Green Energy Fund, can you please stand? If you helped us with our application, we're working together, we are strategizing, can you please stand? Heather, I see you're still sitting back there. Can you share your name and the organization that you represent? Very quickly, we're going to popcorn. Heather? partner. Thank you. Alyssa? Marcus? Done. Vivian? Thank you. Thank you very much. Can you give these folks a round of applause, please? We get to sit in the seat, we get the microphone, but it doesn't work without amazing partners, without amazing staff. The collaboration is what makes it work, and collaborating with incredible people who challenge us. Who's not in the room? Mayor Blackwell, City of Maple Heights. Ohio Environmental Council, I want to be sure that you are acknowledged for the work that you're doing and the partnership that we continue to build. Cuyahoga County, under Chris Ronane's leadership as a county executive, our corporations, they have sustainability goals, and we're working with those partners. The moral of the story for us is we are better together. And I do want us to be around a coalition of not just the willing, but the coalition of the good who are willing. And that makes partnership easy for us. So I'm actually glad you all showed up, or no one would have stood when I made that request. And I hope that we can add to that. As the Congresswoman representing the 11th Congressional District, us at Growth Ops across 8 states and 31 communities, and Mayor Holzheimer in Euclid, just up the road from home for me, we're looking for the coalition of the good. We need folks who are not only going to represent the communities we said we were going to represent, but who have been representing these communities. It is a big tent. If we're not working together, unless you have a reason for us not working together, let us know. Come see us. Tristan Rader over in Lakewood doing a lot of amazing things, has been long in this work. Let's partner. Let's do it really well. And let's do it in a way that we don't look back on it and wish we had done more together. Let's look back on it and say, we gave it our all. And this rock is better for it.
Thank you very much, Mr. Jeans. Can we please give a round of applause to our esteemed panelists? We want to thank all of you for participating here today. We want to thank everyone who came in attendance today. This concludes our panel. We want to thank you all for spending your afternoon with us to talk about the transformative change and work that's being done thanks to the federal investments. And we also want to thank you all for sharing the excitement with us about Solar for All, which we so brilliantly predicted would happen the day before our panel discussion. Thank you guys all for being here. We appreciate you all. And thank you guys. Have a good day.